So while you wait for the microphones to be sorted out, now is the perfect time to think about some questions to ask the panel. I'll also just introduce while we wait as well. So here we've got Chairman Kenny Smith, I'm sure everyone knows him. Anthony Burrows, nominating officer of the Homeland Party as well. And Councillor Anthony Burrows, sorry. Steve Laws, one of our speakers today, a political activist and citizen journalist. Gareth Falls from NI People, a political party in Northern Ireland. Pete North, a political analyst and blogger. Robert Grajny from Confederatia, and Manuel Schreiber from the Alternative for Deutschland. So, I've introduced the panel. Now we're going to do this in sort of two parts, because I'm hoping we'll get quite a lively discussion from the panel over here. So as I was saying, I'm going to start by asking the panel a theme question, and as you're all aware, the theme is what is sensible nationalism and how do we sell it to the public? So first of all, Kenny Smith, what is sensible nationalism?
Sensible nationalism for me is nationalism that wins. We have had a nationalist movement in this country for many, many years, and there's this misconception that if you bring the truth to the public, they will just vote for you. That's all we need to do. We need to get our literature in the hands of the public, and they will join our political party, or at the very least vote for us. And frankly, that's rubbish. Again, more of the rubbish I keep talking about, isn't it? But sensible nationalism is about promoting people for me. It's about finding leaders in the community who will work in the community and represent a positive image, who can manage their language, manage how they speak about people. And a big thing that we did in the Homeland Party right at the very start is educate our media team about what narrative we wanted to put out into the public domain. So we spent a lot of time even debating about various words, about how they are, we decided we were not going to talk about being British so much. We wanted to establish that we were the English, the Scottish, the Welsh, the Northern Irish, establish ethnicity as the important thing. And I think you've seen in the past year that is where the public discourse is now. So we've set out with the agenda. We want to set the agenda. We want people talking in the right way and promoting nationalism in the right way. So that's what it's about for me, because if you are seen as somebody who is sensible and has got answers, that's generally what the public want to do. If you sit in any pub in the country and speak with people, they will agree with probably 9 out of 10, maybe even 10 out of 10 things that you say, and then you put it on the ball and say, see, everything you've just agreed with me about, we've got a political party that stands up for that. And I'll guarantee you, 9/10 out of 10, these people will say, oh, no way, don't do politics, mate. No, don't, I'm not a nationalist. Of course you're a nationalist. You've just agreed with every single thing I've said. But the problem is, they see nationalism as something thuggish, something extreme, something negative. Now, we all know it's not. And to change people's perception, that's going to be down to us selling sensible nationalism. So, I don't know if that answers your question. Anybody else?
For me, sensible nationalism is going back to how things were and how they ought to be. So if we were to look back 120 years to the turn of the century, the Parliament...
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Right. The Parliament would be made up of Tories and Liberals. Now, they might have different ideas on capitalism, mild forms of socialism, how much people should be able to vote, who's allowed to vote. They have all those different debates going on. But they all agreed on one thing, that the country belongs to the people and not to other people. They weren't saying, oh, what we need to do is bring in millions of others to drive the economy. If you said to a Liberal or a Tory during that time period, "Oh, what if we brought in, millions of people from sub-Saharan Africa? Wouldn't that make the country more diverse?" They would just put you in, an asylum. pretty much. It was they didn't say we are nationalists, we're all nationalist parties, because nationalism was just the standard on which Europe was built. That there are independent nations, sovereign nations, and the arguments were about the differences between the power of the state and the power of the people. Sensible nationalism today is just trying to restore those core ideas of, well, why can't we have a sovereign nation? Why do we have to have this sort of globalized thing? Why are we browbeating people into not sticking up for themselves? Why is it that they can't stand up for themselves? That promoting that kind of nationalism rather than it being against any specific group is the kind of thing I'm interested in. But I'll pass on to someone else now. Mr. Laws?
Well, I'm probably not the best person to speak on sensible nationalism, but to me, it's not really about the rhetoric that I class as sensible. It's more the goal and the aim of what you're doing. So, for example, standing in elections, joining a political party, getting active on the streets, that's sensible nationalism to me. But going protesting and fighting on the streets with police and burning down hotels, that's not sensible nationalism, but it will all be tied in together with what we stand for. So, of course, we understand the frustrations of these people doing that, but it's not sensible, it's not smart. So that would be my take on it. I'm probably not the best person for this discussion.
Kenny alluded to me being one of the types that are the softies in the group. So nationalism to me, Ireland, Northern Ireland, it's really complicated because the nationalists would be Catholic and United Ireland, and then the unionists would be nationalist but British. And identity then becomes a big part of this, and it's something that we really have to consciously try and strive to change the narrative. So the NI People Party is trying to do both Protestant and Catholic. It is really an amalgamation of both unionist and nationalist. And for us, it's about being for the people, by the people. So your strap lines are similarly to what you guys have done. We took away the red, the green, and we also had to take away blue. We had to take away yellow, green, gold, white, anything else that kind of looked at it. And it wasn't
White flag.
It does almost, doesn't it? But what we had to do is really strip it bare as to, well, what is it we're trying to do? And actually for us, what it's going to look like is nationalist tendencies are not going to be talked about very much. It's about a libertarian approach, less government, more freedom, that it's the freedom for the people. And it's about portraying hope. It's about portraying vision. And actually from there, we will be able to go and actually develop policies. And I think some of the things you're talking about, where if it's something that is divisive, that's where you go to referendum. That's where you give those decisions back to the people rather than you trying to take over leadership on single issues that are divisive. So progressive to me, being sustainable, being sensible, is about knowing what's contentious, but using language that's not going to be antagonistic to people. You will antagonize just by the nature of who you are. I annoy people every day of my life, and that's mainly my wife. But as a result of that, you've got to try and be a little bit more sensitive, emotionally intuitive as to how to reach to your market, and that your market is bigger than who is necessarily in the room. You can canvas to a wider audience than just your membership.
There's a video that's it's quite old now. It's a little skit by Chris Rock as an instructional video to young black men on how not to get your ass kicked by the police. And it basically involves turning off aggressive rap music that says fuck the police, pulling over when instructed, being polite, and don't have a crazy person in the car. And that's how you don't get your ass kicked by the police. And I've often thought that nationalism in Britain needs an equivalent as to how not to drag your movement into being called neo-Nazi. And the problem with any nationalist party is it is always going to struggle to disassociate it from its roots. That was very much BNP's problem, and certainly the rebrand for Homeland has helped British Racing Green is a great idea. But the thing is, it doesn't matter how professional your facade is, unless you've got party discipline and to have people consider about the symbolism and imagery they employ, then they're going to undo all of your hard work. And I've seen this. I'm not sure if it's Britain First or one of the. They had a gathering in Wakefield where they had a horse through with a St George's cross and a knight on the backside. It's so utterly cringe, and that's always been the problem with. It's not that I'm afraid of being called a Nazi. It's like, if I associate with these people, am I going to be utterly humiliated by their conduct and the badges they wear? And so this is about removing the barriers to participation. People need to look at you and say, actually, you're like me. You're nothing at all like I imagined. You're well-dressed, you're sensible, you're smart, you're articulate, and you don't call people names. So it's about the representatives having self-discipline, recognizing the context of the environment that I'm in. And I have to say, witnessing a few of you lads chanting Ausländer, raus outside this building is probably not the most constructive or helpful thing I've seen. And so, a code of behaviour is essential to any party, and message discipline matters. And you can't. And I'm. When I was invited here today, I was hesitant, thinking, what does ethno-nationalism mean, and how stringent does that go? How far does that go? If we're talking about deportation, who does that apply to? And I think in nationalism, and you see this debate often between Steve and myself on Twitter and among other nationalists, there's this growing distinction between civic nationalist and ethno-nationalist. And I don't think that we can afford those distinctions. You're either a nationalist or you're not. The basic question is, do you believe in the nation state? If you do you believe in borders? Yes, in which case you believe that they must be enforced. And say if you're a civic nationalist, well, if you're a coherent civic nationalist, and you believe that you can have a multi-ethnic society so long as everybody lives by the same set of values and ideas and the same rule of law for everybody, then you have to actually define what those values are, what that rule of law is, and say there's going to be no exception. And that necessarily means becoming authoritarian, saying, we're not going to have, Sharia courts or equivalents in other faiths. And it necessarily means kicking out the people on the terror watch list. It necessarily means rounding up and removing illegal immigrants. So an effective, doctrinally coherent civic nationalist party would have policies that were 90% similar to a notionally extreme ethno-nationalist party. So I think we have to park any sort of philosophical disagreement and talk about policy, what is urgent, what is necessary, what we all agree on, and to effectively not make complete prats of ourselves.
Okay. For me, sensible nationalism, that means being sensible for those who you take care of, for the people who you serve to. That means your nation, your own people, as well as the deep understanding, as I said in my speech, to your neighbors, to understand their own way of thinking, because this is the basis of understanding and of the integrations, because this is what we need to stay united. And being sensible, it doesn't mean to avoid the truth, where the truth must be said, because you are all politicians here. You are not psychologists, neither coaches, to say people things to make them feel better. You are politicians, you need to say the truth. What I see, it's your goal for your party. Well, in short, I think this is the point.
For me, sensational nationalism would be a positive nationalism, focusing on the the being proud in what we have and what we are, and not being repulsive towards the other, because this would be just not a good ideology. It would just this would turn people into beings eaten by hate. We have to have this positive message of ourselves, of our heritage, and we have to go out with it. And when we are going out with it, we have to reach the future, which is the youth. I would think it would be a great idea if the nationalist movement in the UK would build up like some famous TikTok stars or something like this. It sounds stupid at first, and I'm also not a fan of TikTok in its principle, because it's just melting the brains of the younger generation. But the youth is there, and it's incredibly easy to break out of your bubble on TikTok, and the videos are not hard to create. That's how Maximilian Krah got famous in Germany, and this is something which I think can work in almost every nation, at least in the Western world for now. And this would be something I would really advise you for. Build up your own stars, break out of your bubble, reach the youth. And another big point in central nationalism I would see is, if you succeed, which I really hope you do, I want to come back to Britain and I want to see kids everywhere. So like, I don't want to go out on the street at any time of the day and not see a kid. This would not be acceptable.
Okay, before we move on, could I just ask that microphone is passed back down, and you guys have two microphones on that table. So if we could keep this one on this side, just for logistic purposes.
There's a couple of wee points I'd like to bring up, principally to yourself, Pete. Language is incredibly important, as I said. You know, we've tailored our media output for that, and one of the ones that we don't use is ethno-nationalist. Nationalism is nationalism based on ethnicity, based on nation. So it's a term I don't often use, and to define us as that, I don't think I reject it completely. But one thing I'd like to ask the panel, and it goes to the heart of, I think, what sensible nationalism does, and a bit the confidence we have is, I think today, the fear of being called fascist, being called Nazi, being called racist, has got very little impact now to people who are confident about their worldview, about their ideology, about themselves as individuals and what they do in communities. The great thing about community politics is it destroys all these things. I remember a councillor in community politics activity in Burnley, where they did a clean-up in a local housing estate that was full of the hypodermic syringes and all sorts. BNP came in with a pile of skips, cleaned up this community, made it fantastic. The people joined in. I think they had to order like a whole nother delivery of trucks in the afternoon, because the community were, yeah, let's get involved in this, and they filled these skips. And the next weekend, the Labour Party came in with a team of activists, including an MP, and said, they had the new leaflet, and they said, you're supporting fascists, you're supporting Nazis, reject the Nazi BNP. And they basically get chased out of that estate. He said, I don't care what you call them. They're the first people who've come into our community and made an impact. You've been our MP for years and done nothing. So, sensible nationalism combined with community politics smashes all these things. And while I do think language is important, I think it's important for us to keep on target, and every time they call us these things, we just mock them. And I do that a hell of a lot. I've been teaching that for years. And I think if we do that, we should, I think you've already done it to a degree with the recent article on yourself. You don't care what they said. If you can call me what you like, it doesn't matter. In the first half of the article, they were saying that we've gone soft because we're dealing with you. And the very next paragraph, they're saying, they've gone extreme because they're dealing with Steve. They don't even have a coherent argument. So I think we as nationalists need to have, be less sensitive to what the left-wing media say, and just focus on what our words are and what our narrative is, and put our words direct into people. And that comes in when you start developing your own media and stuff like that. But I think for me, I think these words have lost their impact. They've never been so weak, and I think we shouldn't fear them. You're right in what you say about keeping the nutters, the antisocial, the extremists out of your party 100%, but I wouldn't do it just so they stop calling us names.
So I see it as like, bear with me a second, let me articulate the point. So, like, no disrespect, Pete, the Ausländer raus thing you criticised, I see that as a benefit. I see it as the party's exciting, the party's young, these people are happy, they're here at a conference, they're dressed smart, they're singing a popular tune that every nationalist agrees. I see it as good propaganda if it goes out.
How do you think that looked to the people of Derbyshire?
I mean, the people that was over the road were more annoyed and frustrated with the people that were counter-protesting than the people dancing.
Yeah.
Nobody criticised it other than you.
Thing is, this is but the point is, we have to make it safe for people kind of like me who broadly sympathise but actually don't want the hassle. People who maybe work in teaching or the public sector or a university. I have to keep a cordon sanitaire between myself and my partner. She doesn't know what I do politically. She works at a university. And so there are professional consequences for some people, and certainly I turned up to the demo in York about the Linton on Ouse migrant camp, and I was identified by one of the stand up to racism things. I started getting anonymous hate mail that had got mined personal information about not only myself and my family, to the extent that I had to get the police involved, and that persisted for some time. And so while I don't care, and you can call me anything you like, it's about intimidation of my family and in threatening sort of professional consequences. And so a party that wants to advance nationalism has to maintain the discipline and do everything possible to make it safe for waverers to feel that they can make that leap.
I completely understand your point, but at the same aspect, you're just playing into their hands by doing that. Because you're ultimately giving these people a way in to control your narrative. Whatever you do, there's going to be somebody who's going to criticise it and say, that's not what I stand for, I don't agree with that, you're wrong on that, you're a Nazi, I'm going to find out where you live and I'm going to hunt you down and make your life hell. You could do that for promoting housing, you could do that for promoting socialism, you could be a Marxist and get that. So it's not just a nationalist thing. That's not something that we should be fearful of or scared of. That's something why, for example, I use the strongest rhetoric we can possibly use without getting away with it. And I do so to try and encourage more people to speak openly, knowing that there's no fear of consequence for what you say.
But there is consequence, that's the point.
There is if you break the law. There's a consequence in terms of, there is a risk that you could potentially lose your job for your opinions, which is morally wrong. I've experienced that myself. Others in here have probably had the same approach. But do you think that's a reason to buck down your views and back off just because somebody fired you before your opinion?
If you've got a mortgage to pay, keeping a roof over your head is pretty important.
Yes, but there is options of getting other lines of work.
Not if you've been a particular career specialist in, say, academia or medicine, and these are the people we need.
I can take that on board, but
the people who can speak freely are people like you and me who have got absolutely nothing to lose. They can come after me. I'm ring fenced. My name is already mud in several circles, and probably this one after today as well. So you can come after me. The threats to me personally don't make much difference. but we need to be able to make it safe so someone who's a university lecturer can join the party and openly speak about that without fear of consequence. And so, in terms of official party business, you've got to keep it clean. And I actually commend you for the work you've done. Part of the reason I'm here today is because it passed my first test. I will go to the website, I will look at it, and if it's the usual red, white, and blue, and the long, sprawling green ink essays that are peppered with crackpot theories. And this is it. The two things that need to be absolutely kept, even if you believe that stuff, just put it in a cupboard. Stuff to do with international conspiracy theories about who runs the media and yada yada, and COVID bores. Everybody to an extent was complicit with what happened with COVID. Maybe you wised up early on. But we can't just blame it all on the government. Everybody was in some way complicit. And if we're going to be, and what the public largely wants is to put it behind us, to just forget about it, to move on. And we've got better things to talk about. But COVID bores are politically toxic. So it's about keeping it relevant and keeping.
I think if we could just allow Kenny to respond so we can move on.
Yeah.
On the subject of jokes and humour, about this little sing-song that was had, you said, but what will the people of Derbyshire think?
Yeah.
Whereas Steve said, I don't care. I only care about what nationalists think. I can see both sides of this, and it's a constant struggle inside my own mind and inside of other people on the National Council trying to decide what is the best angle to take on things. At what point does a sense of humour become a drag? At what point does it become a great benefit? And I think the line that should be drawn is the humour understandable to the majority of people? If it is, it's probably all for the good. If it's insular and only understood by people who are in the know and understand the joke, it's probably going to be quite othering. And that is a constant hazard. And I've fallen foul of that myself, where I've had to account for my sense of humour at length.
Well, a party that wants to distance itself from ideas of fascism is probably not wise to be chanting things in German, because for some reason I cannot quite pinpoint the German language is vaguely associated.
And you do have a point where it works in Germany because they're already German. So it doesn't sound weird singing that. It's incredibly popular for them. They're singing it in nightclubs.
We would worry if Germans weren't weird.
Well. With respect to our new friends. So it works for them. But then does that humour translate to England? I would say sort of, but not exactly, in the same way that our humour doesn't necessarily translate very well to the Germans, even though our humour is objectively better. There is something to be said on this. I'll pass over to Kenny now, I think.
I was going to make a different point about jobs and stuff like that, and we can go back to later. I'll stick on this one. If the lads had asked me beforehand, can we do this, I'm pretty sure I would have probably said no. But I've seen the video, and it is funny. No two ways about it. So the great unwashed turn out with their boombox wanting to drown us out. It's not working, is it? And our guys, smart guys, just hack their Bluetooth and mock them. And as I've said before, I am all for mocking. So I get what you're saying. It is a track I think the British public are very aware of. It was during the is it Euro Championships, the football tournament, or was the World Cup? I can't remember. Whatever it was. It was going on in Germany in the summer. Everybody knew about it. There was football clubs. Was it one of the clubs down near me did a statement because their fans had a flag that basically either said "Stop the boats" or "Ausländer, raus," or whatever it was. They had that, and the club had to disavow these guys. That's mental, isn't it? And they we did a version of this song at the at the Homelander camp, where we changed the lyrics to be about the Scottish, the Welsh, the Irish. I don't know if you've seen it. And it was shared on that football club's tweets. And it got like 70,000 views alone just for that. And we changed the words. But I honestly think people are aware of it. And one of the things that we're a small party, as I've said, 250 strong. That sounds impressive to people in nationalism, but in the grand scheme of things, it's tiny. Most people in this village would never have heard of us until this week, when the word started going round we were having this conference. And now they all hear of us because there's a bit of controversy. The left in this town have been protesting about. So I do think, sensible nationalism, but there are times like this. I think you take advantage of these situations, because the people who see that video will think, that is funny, look at them mugging the Reds. And people have got very little time for these people. We've seen it with the Extinction Rebellion and all these protesters. They're sick and tired of these busybody do-gooder idiots who are trying to stop people having fun and respecting their heritage and identity. So for me, if there are guys in here who are on that video, come and see our media team. Give a thumbs up if you're willing to put have your fist in that video, or you want it clipped out. Come and see it, because I think it should be released, because it is funny and it'll bring more awareness to the Homeland Party now.
But if it.
Steve just made the suggestion to me. Well, what if we have a show of hands? Does the House agree with said video or disagree with said video? So, show of hands for agree with the video, and disagree with said video.
I think that
I think that ends that part of the debate. But we'll pass on to Gareth.
Yeah, so my take on it was slightly different. It was, if you were going to do it and you wanted it to go viral, actually what I would have done is go buy them an ice cream, take it across the street and give them an ice cream. Go entertain them. Go actually and say, we want to bless you. And it's the principle of Jesus. Turn the other cheek is obviously gentle Jesus, meek and mild. But actually, the gentle Jesus wasn't that. He turned the other cheek to embarrass the people who were protesting them. So if there was a way to positively embarrass them, that, I think, is a message that goes forward positively.
I'm pleased to tell you we're way ahead. We've already put a video out of us offering them cups of tea and the like. So, yeah, we're already on this job. Homeland Party leading the way once again. But going back to the other notes, there was something that Pete touched on. He said nation state when we were talking about civic nationalism, ethnic nationalism and all that. And this is just it. It becomes a word game, doesn't it? Where nation is an ethnic word. It's a tribal word from natio, the Latin. But the way certain people use it, they use it as though it doesn't mean that. It just means, well, nothing. If someone doesn't agree with what a nation is and they use the phrase nation state, they're just saying state. It's quite strange when you get a Tory say, we're going to have a nation state, while simultaneously doing everything to not have a nation state. Everything's a word game, I find. So I think anyone who says, oh, I'm a civic nationalism and I believe in strong nation states, he's either ignorant or he's lying, in my opinion.
I think this is a point about semantics. What will we call a nation in Latin language, or in English, or in mine Polish? Because if we say about nation, it's rather about ethnicity, which is politically organized. So, which correspond to your question?
The way we phrased it in our own literature is that a nation is an ethnic group that has become self-aware. And
yes,
that it would mean that they regard themselves as an entity, and therefore by being regarded as an entity, it is inherently political. So yeah, we'd agree on that.
The point I was talking about earlier was about jobs. Now, I do understand people are in sensitive industries, and we have to be measured that, and we help and protect these people. I've spoken to young guys recently who are going to university, studying law, and I said, don't be an active nationalist. Get your degree and then studying an area of law that you can help nationalists in future, fight for our rights, defend our people, things like that. So there are times definitely where people have to be a bit more measured. And my fondness of people being open nationalist doesn't mean that some people shouldn't be. I'm very much in favour of that. But I also think there's a myth about the impact on jobs. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. We know it happens. We've all seen it happen in certain places. But I went from being the head of administration for the BNP for years, when the fella sacked me. I 2 months later got a job with the Department of Work and Pensions. At one point in my first year, I was suspended on full pay while they investigated me because that same guy who sacked me had reported me for working there and said, what my history was. So, but I fought and won, and I challenged them. And I think that's what we have to do. I think a lot of the cases I've seen over the last 5 years of people who have lost their employment are guys who refuse to fight their employers and fight for their rights and demand that they say, they just say, no, it's not worth it, I don't want the publicity, I don't want the thing. So, and what I found with that is the majority of these people who have lost their employment is because they have said something beyond the pale, way beyond the pale, online, in chat groups or on social media, and that's what gets them into trouble. If you're a sensible nationalist, it doesn't happen to you. We've got guys sitting in this room, one in particular where Si, not seeing him, he must be doing some security work, but he basically, he was the feature of a newspaper report, no problem. The progressive left were so upset they started phoning his employer, and his employer said, I don't care. He's a good employee, he's a good guy, we love him, don't phone back. So, and that won't happen in every single industry. But one thing for me that can change that is if nationalism becomes sensible, becomes successful, we get strength in numbers, and more people are then prepared to stand up and defend, and we're not seen to be minority. I think one of the things that the big problems we have now is there is that situation in lots of companies where there are lots of people think the same way, but people are afraid to talk out. They don't challenge all these things. And then if you go into a company where the majority of people are open and free with their language, who tell you the shared views, these people don't get treated in the same way. And I've seen it myself firsthand, going into companies where they think everybody in here is going to be woke, everybody in here is going to be a complete raving liberal, and then I waltz in and go, I'm a nationalist, and they go, I share some of your views, and before you know it, 3 weeks in, everybody's talking about immigration in the canteen, and I guess I didn't realise we were in a right-wing job here. So that can happen. Having that confidence, having that belief helps. But I do take on board, and you have to think about your families and stuff like that. So it's a choice for every individual. But I do honestly believe the fear of losing your job, the fear of social ostracism, is much higher than the actual reality.
So before we move on, could I just get a show of hands if you have a question you intend to ask the panel? Could you just put your hand up just so we've got an idea of how many questions we've got? Okay, thank you. So we've talked a bit about what sensible nationalism is, and we've had quite a lively discussion on that, and we have sort of drifted into the territory of how it's sold to the public. I wonder if we could get some quite quick answers, preferably, on how is sensible nationalism sold to the public? Starting with Kenny.
Sensibly. I think I'm going to be honest. I'm going to blow our own trumpet. The way we are doing it now, so it is promoting the fact that we're confident, that we're open, and that we're doing things in communities. I don't think there's a better model than what we're doing. So I don't know how much stress. What I was interested in with this question was, what did the panel think we're doing? Is there anything that they thought the Homeland Party was doing wrong? We could do better. Do you think that our model is going to be successful? because I passionately believe it is. I think it already is proven that it's most successful. You know, in May 2023 we were founded. End of January, we became a registered political party, and we have overtaken most of the competition. And that is because we are selling nationalism in the right way. There's many people in this room here who have never been involved in politics before. We've got councillors now who, some of them didn't vote until their late 20s. And they've now come on board with us and become councillors. That for me shows that what we're doing is the right way. And there's other people who have been established for 15, 20 years who haven't achieved that, you know, half of what we've achieved in the past 8 months. So I think, how do we sell sensible nationalism? The Homeland way.
I can't really disagree with anything he just said. I'm going to struggle to add to it, to be honest.
I might look at the inverse and say, how shouldn't it be done? And we have a real-time model evolving in the name of reform. This is a party that it's a collection of multimillionaires who are fighting the campaign through GB News, YouTube, and through the media, talking not to the people, but to the media. And the more it talks to the media, the more it modifies its message. And it continually defines itself by what it isn't. It says, oh, well, we're not those people. We don't believe in this. We're not going to do that. We're not going to deport, mass deportation. We're not going to. So we have been told for 6 months now what that party isn't. But I can't go onto their website. And this is the thing in the digital age. Your party is what your website says you are. Now, I go onto the Reform website. I can find a bit of introductory blurb from Nigel Farage and Richard Tice, but where's the statement of principles? Where's the list of 10 fundamental values our policies are based on? Where are the policies? Where is the manifesto? Where is the research that your policy? None of that work's been done, and it probably never will be done. And then you've got a top team. It talks about, we're going to professionalise the party. No, they're not professionalising it. They're bureaucratising it. They are building local party structures, but the professionalisation that needs to happen is not at the grassroots level. That will take care of itself. The professionalisation you need to see is from their MPs who actually agree a line between them. But no, they don't even do that. So they have one guy going on Question Time one night saying, we're going to abolish Scottish devolution. And then Nigel Farage says, no, we're not going to do that. I don't know where he got that idea from. We're going to stop the boats and return them all to France. And then someone else chimes up there saying, no, we're going to do something else. So these people can't even get their own message straight between them. And absolutely every single problem it has stems from the fact that it has no intellectual foundation and no message discipline. And looking at that's why I'm even taking Homeland remotely seriously, because you go to the website, it understands the importance of the of disambiguation. The image is correct. I think it's underdeveloped when you look at what is the intellectual product behind this, but there are principles on there, and I'm sure you're going to be developing policies in the future. And if your top team actually takes the time to study, learn, and stick to the script, and you're all speaking from the same script, then you will have a coherent message. But of course, Reform can't do that. They can't stick to the script because there isn't a script. So you want to know how to do things right, just do the absolute opposite of what Reform's doing.
In Northern Ireland, what we have tried to do is the political party is one aspect, and we're coming at it from a top-down hierarchical structure. What we're trying to do is around every candidate, we will have the membership that will be supporting that candidate and setting up a community investment fund or social business. And they will have slightly different ethos. So with our party leader, He is very much a Catholic in a Protestant setting. He is going round the streets to serve. He is doing street cleans. He's getting people out there just doing the street cleans, and then they're following up with the door-to-door, leaving off a card. We're getting 3 or 4 memberships every time we send a team out onto the community to do that. It's a really secure way to go and get added membership. The other one that's going to be revolving around myself is to do with natural health care and trying to get an alternative system to the NHS, because I'm one of those COVID complainers. But we want to try and make sure, do we have an alternative for people who are not going to go down the narrative that are being sold, and where do they go as a result? So that means I already have a connected group and community around me that's invested in ensuring that I am going to be successful. We're trying to do that again with another candidate. So it's about trying to ensure their skill set and the community around them will then get some other structure that will be called a different name, but is without doubt it's complementary, and it's an invested way to get membership. It's a vested way to get community. If you can rally the troops and get people really believing that they matter. And what you're talking about from a nationalist front is people who are disenfranchised, who feel they don't have a voice, who feel that they have lost their purpose and their direction. If you want to sell that purposefully, it's about giving them back the power to make the difference locally, and then you go national. But having the structure in place to work top down will help you do that.
So just before we move on to audience questions, I would like to get the perspective of Robert and Manuel on how do we sell sensible nationalism.
So if the initial question was how to sell it, I would say the better question would be how to give the example. Because you gathered here at your first congress like this to develop your structures, to try to impact on your local policies. So I think the new party which you are, you should take care of how you create your image, what is your narration, and how to attract new activists for your party. So the best way to sell it to people is just giving an example of your own activism, of your own life. They will see you do it openly, you don't fear it. Because if you fear, you already lost. So for the next year, if you gather here, you must make sure that this hall will be too small. So I would start from this.
Something important, especially for you when you're mostly active on the communal level right now, don't get dragged into discussions about community politics too much. Like, it's important, and it's also important to help the people, to be there for them. But when you're doing rallies, do not do rallies for the I don't know, for the trash can of Aunt Emma, so that the garbage can is going to be picked up twice a week. This is something we on the communal level have experienced, that we lost a bit the connection to our core message. You're nationalists, and this should be at any time your core message, even if the discussion right now is about something else. This does not mean that you're in the city hall and just say to the people, yeah, we have this problem about nationalism. That means you are focusing on the problem, but when you're doing rallies outside before the town hall, you're talking to the people about nationalism and not about this small problem you're now trying to fix. Of course, you have to communicate when you accomplish something, but then this should be it. Not do not make politics with small topics which most of the people really do not care for.
I'd just like to add that one of the things, this is another complaint about reform. I actually tuned into their conference and I watched Zia Yusuf's speech and the other chap from Great Yarmouth and two or three of them. And what they've devolved into is being generic populist right-wing bingo callers, where they say, oh, this thing, it's absolutely horrible. And then they wait for the crowd to politely clap. And then this other thing, there's all these immigrants, that's absolutely horrible. And it's just, there's this recitation of a Brendan O'Neill article from 2002, and they all have the same basic version of it, and they whinge about it. And it's all saying, yeah, we've got the same concerns you have. It's like, yeah, I know. I'm intensely bored of hearing what the problems are, and so I'm continually asking, okay, you've whinged about that today on your Twitter. Where do I go for the policy? What's the solution? And I'm thinking, if we put you in power, would your government actually achieve something in the first 100 days because it knows how to do it, or would it, like Starmer, completely collapse because you wouldn't have done the research and wouldn't have had a clue? So as much as anything, you have to build a reputation for competence and credibility. So if by all means, like a right-wing bingo caller, you can rattle off all the things that are wrong with this country, but you need to be able to put answers, not just sort of simplistic solutions. Oh, we would stop the boats by sending the Royal Navy. No. You need coherent, structured research policy, and you need to be able to say, we've got the solution. Go to our website, you look at our manifesto, and there's a paper on it here. There's plenty of things that you can read, because you can secure a sort of certain level, about 15 to 20% of the electorate with sort of vague populism. But the trick is to take opinion influencers like me, but also newspaper columnists. They don't have to like you, but they have to take you seriously. They have to go and look at your website, and they have to evaluate. And some people will say, oh, well, I maybe don't like this about them, but one thing you can say is that they did actually bother to develop policy and solutions in a political system where there is an absolute vacuum of intellectual product. Labour's got nothing. The Tories have got nothing. The most the Tories can put their hands on is a CPS report by Jenrick. As to reform, it's an intellectual desert. So actually, there is a gap in the market for a coherent party that actually has a foundation, but also has serious answers.
Okay, thank you. So before we move on, does anyone else want to come in on that question, or we'll move on to audience questions? Okay, so we're going to move on to audience questions. We've got someone in the audience with a microphone. We're going to start on this side because we've only got one mic, and then we'll move over to that side. So if I could get a show of hands for questions, I'll pick you out in the audience, and then we'll so if we could just start with this chap here with the green tie. There will be lots of green ties.
Is it on? Hello.
I think you've just turned it off, Martin.
Hello. There we go. My question's for Manuel. We've been talking about sensible nationalism and how it's popular amongst the youth in Germany. So obviously you talked about TikTok, etc. But what other ways can you make nationalism cool?
I don't really think you have to make nationalism cool because it just is. No, but to tackle your question, I think there is just this feeling amongst the youth that they want to be something more. The youth wants to be part in something bigger. They want to be in any group, and I think you really just have to speak to them. Most people have this image of us as the devil. We are the nationalists. We are the evil guys. What we did actually worked quite well in some areas. We made festivals, for example, in 2 weeks we got an Oktoberfest in an area in Saxony. And it's not exclusively for our bubble, but we're flying in beforehand, and then the youth of the town we are in is invited to join us. And some people are coming and they are sitting down with us, having a beer, and then just seeing that we are not those evil persons, but that we are in many ways pretty similar to them, and in most cases have pretty similar views. and I think this is a big part just, when you are studying regional. On the other hand, most teenagers, especially, are in the digital world. Now, I would say if there are 2 or 3 TikTok stars or something like that who break out of our own bubble and with a funny way deliver our message, this would almost be enough. Something it should be something where the teachers in the school say you're not allowed to watch this. Then it's going to be like a fire.
Okay, thank you. So if I could just get guys to put up their hand at any moment when you feel like you want to ask a question, so I don't have to keep asking you continuously for your hands. So show of hands for questions again, please. So if we could just go over here. We've got 2 here. We'll take both one after the other.
Right, so my question is for Michael. I am from Iceland, and I think unlike Britain and Germany, which have had these immigration troubles for many decades now, since the Gastarbeiter and the Winters generation, Poland and Iceland have experienced these relatively recently. I mean, my country started about 2020. I think in Poland it was mainly the Ukrainian war, 2022, the migrant crisis, with the Russians sending people over the border. How does this different experience factor into your policy making? How are you doing things differently from, say, Britain and Germany?
Okay, so the difference, you ask for a difference of treating migrants from Ukraine than from those African. Okay. So this is 2 different migrant problems, like the Belarus border and Ukrainian borders. Well, on the Ukrainian border, there is no any crisis. We've got, of course, a lot of war refugees, and there's over 1 million population of Ukrainians now in Poland, but this is not so many particular problem with them. That's okay. But you ask for migrant crisis at our border with Belarus. So the border with Belarus is long enough. It has about 400 or 500 kilometers, and well, I don't remember for in numbers. But this difficult terrain in the lakes, rivers, in the forests. Our country decided to put the fence. In fact, 3 fences in the interior to defend the border, because this is something to show up in the media. You see, they push some, not only Syrians, but also Ethiopians, Somalians, all of them. They come in tourist or students' visas to Moscow, and with those papers they are replaced to Belarus, and then they are pushed to our border, just to push the border constantly to provoke the situation. There is few reasons that Russians, because Russia and Belarus, in fact, is the same, because the troops are stationing there, the policy is united. So they want to engage our military to defend this border and to run for some Syrians on the border instead of training on the new equipment we buy. It's one of the strategic reasons. The other thing is to show our country as the evil one, that we are pushing back the migrants. But in my opinion, well, this is a proper way to defend from the invasion. So defense is working well. The provocations, now it's more quiet. Every day happens something, but the main battles on the border were during our elections. So this is mostly political war against our country, but I think we manage it good for this moment. If it responds to your question.
So, next question?
Yep, next question.
So, obviously, reform on the rise and sort of going to eat up a lot of the Tory vote and a lot of the Labour vote. Realistically, over the next 5 years, what is the point of Homeland? Because I know we've talked about community politics and actually making a difference locally, and that's good. That's all well and good. Yeah, realistically, what's the actual aim of this? Because I think everybody here wants remigration. That's probably, the biggest thing that is on the minds of us now. Are we trying to push reform and the Tories to an extension to remigration, or are we trying to push them to adopt more of a nationalist? Are we trying to get them to adopt more nationalist policies, or are Homeland actually trying to become a political force on themselves? So, are we trying to force the right to come to our side, or are we trying to get Homeland to be the right side?
We're trying to build our own party. We think it's a waste of time to try and push 4 or 5 years. It doesn't matter how many years it takes. It's entirely possible. If you look at the AFD, they started in the same situation we're in. We start with very little, and over the course of years, they've built it up. So now they're polling high at 30%. They are taking seats in state legislatures, in their parliament, in their European Parliament. Just over the border in Austria, there is a poll tomorrow. It's entirely possible that the FPO will win. The leader of the FPO is talking about remigration. Anything is possible, but you have to build the party to do it. And what's clear is that there is no point in trying to push the Tories to do anything, no point in trying to push Reform to do anything. That's been a subject of debate since the 1980s, and it's been a constant shift more to the Liberal side, despite all these different people saying they're going to do this, they're going to do that, they're going to try and infiltrate them, try and call them out, call the bluff, try and get them to do something. It's a waste of time. You have to start and build a real party. And it starts in places like this until eventually you're doing the big show like these guys. It just takes a lot of grit and a lot of energy.
So I've been in Reform Party. I was part of the party, and there is no route to push them to the right. I've tried. Others are still in the party trying now. They're getting nowhere. They're trying to build a youth wing as we speak, and it's been completely co-opted by the top of the party and their staffers. And that's pretty much the whole ball game with the Tories, with Labour, with the Lib Dems. It's a boys' club. So if you're not in the club and you step out of line, even if you're critical of any of those candidates before they was even part of the party, or you're critical of any policies they've put forward or ideas, because they don't really have any policies, but if any ideas they put forward, they're critical, and they'll have, even if they find the tiniest little screenshot, you're out of the party. It doesn't matter how much work you've done for them. It doesn't matter how much graft you've done. One tiny little bit of criticism by not playing along to the tune, and you're gone. So these aren't parties that can be co-opted and dragged to the right. Ultimately, you need a new party. As he said, you'd need a new party to come through, lead the charge, show this is what we stand for. We're going to grow year and year and year. And then these other parties will be forced to adopt our messages. Just like the Civnats are now using our talking points, it's the same idea.
That's sort of just my point, though. If the goal is that Reform will adopt the policies,
But they won't adopt the policies, they'll adopt the talking points. There's a difference. There's a huge difference. Gemrick right now is adopting our talking points, but he's not going to do it. Everyone knows the Tories, when they get into power, are not going to reverse immigration. They're not going to slow it down. They're not even going to attempt to stop it. Like none of that's going to happen. They're just going to steal our talking points. So it's playing the game of manipulating the voter. This is what Farage is really good at. He will manipulate the voters into saying, yes, I'm your guy. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Now look, he's in. Everyone used to go, when Farage is an MP, the game's going to change. He became an MP and he went zip. And that's it. Even Richard Tice is now more vocal on immigration than him. Even Genrick is outflanking him to the right. This just tells you that it's all a game to these people. They have no idea to actually make change, because if you was an MP in the House of Commons and you've got that ability to speak openly in those Commons about the problems, why is he not doing it?
And I think an interesting perspective on this question could come from our international guests. Obviously, we're not the only country with, conservative parties and sort of fake nationalist parties that try to take ground from genuine, sensible nationalism. So if I could start with Robert, please, your perspective on this question, and is this something you've had to deal with your party?
The fake nationalism in Poland. Well, I can give an example of our former government, which was the conservative one, how it called themselves, with very patriotic rhetorics, but at the same time, it was this group who led over 300,000 people from African and Asian country come to us. So this is the politician that they say we don't want the migrants. Those even the same people fighting on the Belarusian border, our law and justice government. But this is the current scandal, political scandal in Poland, because they let 366,000 of visas with facilitated visas without any checking any skills. They let to come to Poland some Islamic migrants, specialists or engineers, without checking any skills. And we can see it now in the biggest cities. It's not this problem is not as huge as in the western part of Europe, but we can see the change now. And everything was made by this government, which called themselves as conservative. So that's why I think we need to take care of our nationalists movement, because this is the basis of our politics. So we cannot, by definition, act against it.
And Manuel, same question.
Sorry to be the last one to say it's not going to happen, but in Germany we are seeing the same thing. The CDU, every time before elections, they are saying, yeah, we are going to deport people. Even the Social Democrats did it before the state elections in the east of Germany. And then they are like sending one plane where there are 5 people in it, and they are making those highly symbolic moves. Everyone is crying, oh, they are going to deport people now. And then after the election, everything is forgotten. It's not going to work that other people are doing the job we are preparing for, because it's not in their interest. It wasn't in their interest until now, and especially for those big neoliberal parties, they are not seeing our nation the way we are. They are seeing everything which is counting for them is that the economy is going up. And this is easier if you are just not caring about who is in this nation. And so they also do not have any interest in taking the talking points. In the case of the Tories, I must confess I'm not quite sure about reform, but what I've heard today is like I think it's going in the same direction. Their real change can only come from people who have this compass, this line of thinking that they are not going to going to do compromises on. And I think you found this in Homeland. I don't think this is going to work, that someone else is going to do the job.
Just because you were talking specifically about next 5 years, what realistically can you accomplish? We're probably at the stage where we're looking, going, what are we really going to accomplish? Certainly in the next 3, between now and the next election. But there's 3 things that we're currently working on to really try and create influence. And it's trying to understand exactly the influence that Homeland Party has already on social media. So one of them is our agricultural system is up the left at the minute. We're trying to reduce the number of cattle, the number of sheep. You are now having to have a license to register your chickens if you have anywhere over 1, I think, at this point in time, and you have to pay a license fee or registration fee, which we're trying to campaign on. So we're getting chickens that are not vaccinated so that we can actually look after them. On a health front, there's a health reform bill coming in Northern Ireland in Stormont in the next 2 weeks to review. On that, there will be the mandate for them to break into your house, steal your possessions, steal your family, steal everything that you own, force vaccinate you, force intern you, which Northern Ireland has a rich history of internment, and that has just hit huge in social media online. We are the ones that are pushing that with the other political parties, saying this has to be extended, you have got to revoke this cannot take place. Please be assured that if that goes through in Northern Ireland, it's coming after you in the UK. We are being the guinea pigs on this, just as they did with the abortion law. And we now have the most lenient abortion legislation in Europe because it was put and imposed on us, which we're campaigning against. And the other one was, I can't remember what the other one was, but on the health, the agriculture, we're already on RSE education. So they're wanting to bring the trans agenda into the schools. Actually, within the UK, Great Britain actually refrained from pushing that any further. It actually got passed in Northern Ireland. It is only because the teachers are standing up and saying we're not going to bring this into the schools that we don't have real difficulty in strikes kicking off at the minute. So those we are having influence on, even though they may not be an elected representative yet.
Thank you. And perhaps if Pete wants to respond on the question on what can Homeland Party realistically do in the next 5 years and the merits of trying to push Reform and other parties towards our direction.
Well, what it can achieve in the next 5 years is largely contingent on all of you and what you choose to do. Because I'm a relic. I was there at the beginnings of UKIP, right at the beginning, when we would go and tour places like Morecambe, Northallerton, Thirsk, Bradford, little nobody places around the country, and we'd set up public meetings in church halls and back rooms of pubs, and sometimes it would just be Alan Sked, Nigel Farage and 3 elderly gentlemen in the front row wearing colonial blazers and a farting Labrador guide dog. And that is the crushing disappointment that every single fledgling party has to face. This constant disappointment that no matter how many miles you walk, no matter how many leaflets you put through advertising your public meeting, you'll get events where just nobody turns up, and it's what matters is whether you just take it and go, all right, that's not worth doing, or do you persist? What created UKIP was its persistence. Because any time we turn up to a meeting, we say, well, there's only 3 or 4 of you. There's no excuse for this. If you want us to drive 200 and 300 miles to your village next time, you better make sure that there's 6 people here or 9 people to make it worth our time. And this is how it was done. And it was you have to go and talk to people. But what was interesting about that was you'd have Farage giving his ranty, tub-thumping populist speeches to get everybody riled up. But there was usually an accompanying speaker, usually Alan Sked, who would talk from a professional perspective as an economics lecturer. So it was a public lecture, and you would go to be informed, educated, and inspired. And so it's about building a network nationwide where if you guys can't find a suitable venue, it can be just a little pub back room, and if you can identify 10 or 15, hopefully 20, New Culture Forum's local events can sometimes have about 40, 50 people. If you can make it worthwhile for the leadership of the party to drive from wherever they are to come and talk to you, bring a guest speaker, entertain, inform, inspire. And that way you're creating social networks in the real world as opposed to... and this is the difference between UKIP and all the other parties, is that this was built from the ground up without social media, in real places, with real people, with real connections, making friendships and allies across the country. So if you want this thing to be more than it is now, it's you people who've got to go and build it. It was done in from 91 all the way up within about just a few years. It's got a few MEPs and it grew from there, and you all know the history of that. But it's about good old-fashioned shoe leather and what you decide to do today.
Okay, thank you very much to our panel, and thank you to you, the audience. I apologise to those who didn't get an opportunity to ask you a question, but we have actually gone over time now, so we are unfortunately going to have to end. So once again, thank you to our panel, Kenny Smith for the time he was here, Anthony Burrows, Steve Laws, Gareth Falls, Pete North, Robert Grajny, and Manuel Schreiber. Thank you for your time.